Okay, so welcome to the fifth webinar of our series. We've got one more to go after this. Today we're looking at uncommon summarization skills, and I say uncommon because summarization is a tricky issue. It's not what most people think it is, and I'll mention a few times that summarization isn't reiteration, or in other words, summarization just doesn't mean saying the same thing again later in the paper, which is what a lot of people tend to do. The key to summarizing well is learning how to paraphrase your own work. So we'll have a look at that. Our coverage today will be a slightly different way than we've done for the last 4 webinars. Rather than having 1, 2, 3 separate ideas that are kind of connected or heavily connected, what I'm going to do this time is take the one idea, the one example, and work it and rework it and rework it. So we'll have a look at 3 different stages of the same process. First, we'll look at summarization as a key form of communication. And of course it is. It's the way that we get our points across, because points or the major idea gets lost in the detail, especially when we've got a very result-intense paper to present. Tying ideas together with paragraph themes, which you might remember from the 3rd webinar, and looking at paraphrasing and clarity. And also a quick preview of webinar 6, which will be on conclusions. As I said before we started, this is more of a conceptual webinar today. So we're not looking at a specific section of a paper, but you will see summaries at the end of an introduction. When you're summarizing a whole paper, they're kind of easy to do because you talk about what's in the different sections. There are summaries in discussions, there are sometimes summaries in results sections, and there are always summaries at the beginning of conclusions. But we'll be looking once again at that next time. So what I want to stress, and I've already mentioned this in slightly different words, summarization is not reiteration. It doesn't mean rewriting all the main points. So we see this often, and for Hong Kong academics, it's pretty pertinent at the moment because we're coming up to research proposal submission time, and research proposals, although they're not journal papers, they tend to feature a lot of repetition that can be summarized much more effectively. So this webinar might be useful in that sense too. Excuse me. Summarization involves mentioning the main points only. Okay, and it's really hard sometimes to work out which points are really the main points. It might be obvious if there's research results that you're discussing, but often you'll find that you have an idea that's sitting behind some of those results that you want to reiterate that probably doesn't need reiteration. You mention the main points only to highlight critical elements, critical for your reader, also for presenting your ideas or your results. Highlight those elements and their importance. It should present your findings in a nutshell or in small. That means brief, but I should stress now that brevity doesn't mean it has to be in the least possible words. It's relative. We'll look at 3 examples today. The first example, the initial example, is 52 words of a summary. The next 2 are actually longer, but both 58 words. So they're still very short, but they're a little bit longer than the initial summary. My point is that sometimes you have to add more detail to be more relevant. Now, why does summarization matter? Let's have a look at this. This is the initial description of a study. It's a study about typhoon simulation intensity to look at basically typhoon prediction. For those of you down further south in Singapore, cyclone, the same sort of thing. Okay, so there are 3 different paragraphs here. I've just truncated the 3rd paragraph. Let's have a quick look. The first paragraph just gives the detail. I'll just use my highlighter here. Basically, this paragraph gives the detail of the background detail, why it's important. Numerical simulations can now predict typhoons fairly well. Typhoon track prediction has become better, but intensity prediction is still far from satisfactory. this paragraph basically points out what the authors did. Oh, by the way, I haven't changed very much in this. I added a couple of little words from the original just to make it easier to work on later on, because I had to break it down, take more out of the bottom part. So it talks about vortex initialization as effective method, how they developed a new initialization scheme. The scheme only requires 3 types of data, what it can do, and and the third part is the benefits of the scheme. So, okay, we've basically got the background, the scheme, and the benefits. Okay, it's a low computational cost for those of you who build computer models, data models. You will know that that's very important, that particular thing, because it means that you have a scheme that actually can be used. So there's the 3 main paragraphs. And by the way, what came after this was just details of the testing of the scheme, which aren't really all that important now. So here is the summary as it applies to that. This is what the author wrote. We developed a new vortex initialization scheme and tested its capability in predicting super and severe typhoons. Other than global analysis data, the scheme only requires observational data of the radius of the maximum wind and the maximum wind speed besides. As you can see, I haven't edited that bit. It can satisfy the vortex conditions and has a low computational cost. Okay, so as I said, this is 52 words. This whole paragraph here is only 52 words, and you can see it's much shorter than that. You can also see that it's focused on getting straight into the topic. Okay, it doesn't give any background details, but think about this. If you've just read through 30 pages, you might not really remember all the background details. So let me just put in my horrible handwriting, or especially when I'm doing it on this. Don't forget the reader, okay? Because when the reader's gone through 30-odd pages, which was the case here, the reader might need to be reminded something about the background of this study. Okay, it's not that the reader won't know if they're this level of sophistication and if they're in your field, but it contextualizes things, it puts it in the broad field. So there's basically a little bit of a problem here, and it kind of stampedes towards discussing the types of data. That's fine. The end part here, it's got a bit of a problem, as you will probably see. Okay, in a short while. So removing that highlighting and moving on. That's a fairly effective summary. Let's have a look at a way that we can make it more effective. Okay, the point is not always to get to just over the line. It's actually to win. You know, it's not just to finish the paper. It's to do it well. Okay, you might remember from webinar 3 that the ideal paragraph structure is something like this. It starts with a theme that summarizes the main part of the body, or it not really summarizes, kind of introduces and summarizes at the same time, sets the scene again. And there's a possible link at the end that can link on to, if you're continuing with the idea, into the next paragraph. It's a much smaller element. It doesn't exist in some cases. In some cases, it's just the body, and then the author will go on to another idea. Okay, that's a happy paragraph. The theme marks the overall logical structure of your writing. The theme pushes the reader through. If you might remember, I had a picture of a building in the 3rd webinar, and the theme was, the paragraph was the escalator going up. The theme is the thing that's moving the escalator up each floor. And it also works in reverse, as we'll see in a minute. Okay, because once you've got that theme identified, that's like flagging every paragraph. Every single paragraph has a theme. All you need to do is read through the paragraphs to remember what's in, read through the first sentence of each paragraph to remember what's in that theme. And if you want to do a copy and paste paragraphs onto a separate paragraph themes onto a separate paper to remind you of the overall logical flow of any section of your paper. That's incidentally a really good way of working out if you have got a concise or a precise logical flow going on. So let's put themes back to work. Themes guide your readers forward through the paper, but also backwards, okay? Because they can be used in retrospective, starting from the bottom going up. You can isolate, you can use each theme to isolate a broad point. You can select important details to back up those themes, and they're very small details. You'll see there's, in the last example, there was already something of that there, so it's a good start. But the focus should be on brevity, and as I said before, brevity doesn't mean absolute minimum. No, I can't make anyone a presenter because that's my role, then if you become a presenter, then you get control of my computer. I'm just answering a question in the chat box there. So, and once again, remember, summary isn't reiteration. It has to be brief, but it doesn't have to be so brief it makes no sense. Okay, so the study revisited. This is the Typhoon study again. Once again, I added more to the bottom there. The 3 paragraphs, the background, the study itself, and this is the benefits of the study. The second part of this example here is about the simulations, okay, which is the information I left out before. Now let's isolate the themes and put them to work. Once again, keep in mind it's background, study itself, and the benefits and testing of the study. Let's isolate those themes and the details. So the first theme is the numerical simulations can predict typhoons. When you're at this level of your writing, you probably think that's just so self-evident. But it's important to remember that background is contextualization, creates a picture, and the extra detail there is track prediction is adequate, but intensity prediction is not satisfactory. The second theme is vortex initialization is effective. Okay, the extra detail is the theme being, the scheme being developed and using 3 types of data. The third theme is the scheme has low computational cost. As I said before, low computational cost is really important in computer modeling, and it satisfies vortex boundary conditions, which is important in this field. Simulation, the extra detail there is the super and severe typhoons were simulated. So again, here's the thematics. Here's the initial summary when we're looking to head towards a thematic summary. As I said before, 52 words, 58 words for the thematic summary. Let's see what's different. Again, go to the highlighter. Now we've given some background. We've said 2 things, using the theme and the extra information. The first theme is there are limitations. We need to state in our summary that there are limitations to the current field of numerical simulation, and we add that extra information in. Then we go on to the second part of the sentence, which is the only part here, and we talk about what happens after the. Basically, you have to give a reason for what you're doing, then mention what you're doing. The 2 types of data, low computational cost allows it to be used to simulate severe and super typhoon cases. Okay, so this is a step up. This is basically, apologies for the mess there, I'll just remove that. This is just a way of adding more critical information without saying everything, giving it a better context, making things a bit clearer, okay, making sure that the situational information here backs up why you wanted to do it, so you reiterate your reason for doing, and you basically mention the whole process of your paper. So as I said, that's one step. That's the second step. So reuse your most. This takeaway from that is reuse your most significant paragraph themes. Not all of them, just the most significant ones. And I just picked an easy example to show you that. Sometimes you'll have a paragraph theme that's very important, and the next 2 or 3 won't be so important because you're just kind of giving extra detail. So you'll skip to the next big paragraph theme. They guide your readers back through the paper, like the elevator I showed you, or in this case a compass. So they grasp your overall point, or series of points if you like. But you know, the overall point in this paper is that typhoon, and this is my background, they're called cyclones where I come from, or even though I've been in Hong Kong for 14 years, typhoon intensity still can't be simulated very well. This is what this study is all about. So what is paraphrasing? There's a lot of confusion about paraphrasing. There are a lot of different ideas about what paraphrasing is. Basically, because in academia, paraphrasing is often related to avoiding plagiarism. And that's an unfortunate situation. It doesn't mean there's a lot of plagiarism or anything, but what it means is that there's been so much focus on making sure trainee academics, students avoid plagiarizing by accidentally just copying out words when they should be putting them into their own ideas. They should be synthesizing information. That people have come to see paraphrasing as a way of avoiding plagiarizing. But it's not the case. That shouldn't ever be the case. It is so much more. It is so much more important. It's more than just rewriting. It's more than just using different words for the same idea. That's part of it. But it's summarizing to enhance clarity. Okay, when we push the plagiarism bit out of the way, it's about summarizing to enhance clarity. Not just noting points, but improving them. Paraphrasing can make a good idea even better, or it can make a good idea even more to the point or more specific, which is what we'll be doing now. So, paraphrasing in action. Here's the thematic study, once again 58 words. Here's the effective paraphrasis. I always have problems saying that. That's the technical term, the correct word for paraphrasing. Okay, it's exactly the same number of words, but it's a slightly different format, so it just appears to be slightly more. Exactly the same amount of words, 58 words. Let's have a look at what the differences are. So we mentioned it can now predict typhoon tracks, so we're intensifying the background information. We're making it more pertinent. And once again, there's exactly the same amount of words. So we don't have to worry about, you know, okay, I've just made it way too long. It's 58 words. That's like, for some people, that's one sentence. Okay, so we've enhanced the first theme by reiterating the whole of it, but in a way that shows, it just kind of leads towards why the study was important. So we're keeping the thematic study aspect. You know, it's a certain situation happens, therefore we did something. It's the same sort of carry on there. So you justify your study once again, and justifying your study late in the study is probably a good idea if people are a little bit kind of fatigued by all the detail. The next sentence, the rest of the next sentence is pretty much the same. It just mentions the types of data, and it's slightly differently because, I'll just clear that, slightly differently because it just basically would have been way too long. And then we get down here. Here's the other key element. What I've done now is switch the order of this sentence around, so it shows that even though it is a relatively sophisticated model, it has a low computational cost, really emphasizing that kind of efficiency there, and that moves on to allowing the scheme to be evaluated through the simulation of severe and super typhoons. Incidentally, the original one had super and severe typhoons, but I've put them in order of intensity, which is kind of not all that important. It's just the type of thing editors do when we can't help ourselves. Okay, so what we have there is it's a little bit more information, a little bit reordered, a little bit more to the point. It's something that a reader can look at and say, okay, I've got the whole picture back in my head. Now I can relate the details that I've just seen. That's the critical aspect because, as we'll see, takeaway 2 is paraphrasing will make your main points more memorable because they've gone into someone else's worldview. So your readers can relate them to what they already know. You know, a lot of you will have read a book or read a paper and thought, oh yeah, I've seen that, I've thought of these things before, but not in that exact same way. And now I can see links to other areas, and that's the big aha moment you get when you're researching or when you're doing a literature review as part of research. So this is what we should be aiming to do, and our summaries are a key element of that. So don't forget, there's my little man who's always sitting there. Summarization is not reiteration, because that is boring, and if the person has to go through reading all that again, they'll just skip to the end or just head off. Incidentally, if you reiterate when you summarize, your journal reviewers will pick it out and crucify you for it. They really aren't happy about that sort of thing. And this is one of the reasons why people often complain about word lengths in journals, because they're not really effective in summarizing their work. Paragraph themes can be used as effective summarization tools, as we've seen. They give, not only that, but they give you an idea of what you've also written, you know, so you can kind of get back into the frame of mind that you need when you wrote a paper, you know, the main part of a paper 2 months ago, and you have to remember now, what was it I said? You can look back through your themes and use them to summarize for your own benefit as well. Paraphrasing clarifies your main point. In some way, it always helps to improve those main points. Once again, readers should always be on your mind, and I reiterate, I'm saying that reiteration is important, but it is in this case. Always remember, readers are what you're there for. If you don't write for your readers, you don't have an audience, you don't have a publisher, you don't have a publication. So that's it for summarization, but we'll be coming back to this next time around in a slightly different way. Webinar 6 on the 27th of next month, which is only a couple of days away, next month that is. We were looking at concluding rather than just ending a paper. This will be going back to looking at a specific section. We're looking at conclusions, but there are conclusions are interesting. What is a conclusion anyway? Well, there are two parts to that an answer. There is a conclusion as in a conclusion drawn, which is the end of a logical chain of logic. Never forget that, because your conclusion, your section of your paper, should be the end of a chain of logic, not just something you have to write to end the paper. Okay, that's where I'm really going to be focusing on that. I'll be looking at drawing conclusions effectively, or using writing skills to make sure that your main points are really, really effectively pulled together and presented at the end, and leaving lasting impressions. That's why I label this one concluding, not ending, because there are so many papers that just stop, and you're left thinking, well, couldn't you kind of, you know, give something else to, but no, you didn't. So we'll be looking at kind of improving that situation. And if you have any questions, just ask now. We'll wrap up really quickly. I think we've gone a little bit over time, but no. Okay. In any case, thank you very much. Oh, until then, bye for now. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much.